guys, you all already know it. I already know it. It's been a while. I'm going to make this video, maybe make like 2 more in the course of the next month or so, and then I'm going to be gone for like another half year to a year. So let's just do this, get this over with, and we'll see where we're at, okay? For this video, instead of making like 2 big large analysis or like discussion videos, I kind of would rather just condense my thoughts of these 2 games into one video, that being Final Fantasy XVI and Spider-Man 2, obviously. Goes without saying that this is going to be a very condensed review of both games, so expect story spoilers and everything else. Granted, Final Fantasy XVI has almost been out for a whole year now, and everyone and their mothers have been talking about Spider-Man 2 since the dawn of time, so I don't really expect that to be a problem, but you have been warned. That said, knock on wood, I do want to keep this relatively shorter today, hopefully within a half hour. But yeah, I want to talk about both games, Final Fantasy XVI and Spider-Man 2. It's been a while since I played both of these games with just life stuff and everything, all the boring stuff that, you know, prevents anyone from doing YouTube videos for a while. I played Final Fantasy XVI around August of last year, and it took me close to almost a full 2 months to beat it, largely just because of time stuff. I was also sharing my PS5 with my flatmate at the time. Yeah, anyways, all that to say was that it took me a good bit to play and beat Final Fantasy 16. Spider-Man 2, on the other hand, took me maybe a week, maybe 2. But yeah, so let's start with Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16, it's been longer since I've played it, so I don't remember all like the fancy terms and stuff. But the biggest takeaway from the game is that it's basically a like a medieval spin on Attack on Titan, as far as like magic and swords and dragons and stuff go. It's like, it's that setting and environment, but the plot of Attack on Titan. You have these special individuals who all come from a specific line of race of humanity, and they have the ability to turn into these deities. In Attack on Titan, they're just like, you know, special forms of Titans. But in Final Fantasy XVI, these individuals can actually turn into the Final Fantasy deities, such as Odin, Bahamut, Ifrit, the Phoenix, Shiva, Titan, and so on, right? There's a couple more that I'm forgetting, but yeah. So these individuals can turn into those deities. The deities kind of do have more of like a personality, like they have to have a pact or like a bond with their deity in order for the transformation to kind of go well. Or at least that's been the impression that I've been under. And by denying their deity, then like the deity can take over during the transformation and something. Sometimes the characters refer to the Transformers, is what I'm calling them. Sometimes other characters refer to the characters who can transform into the deities, either by their human name, so like Clive or Jonah or whoever else, but sometimes too they also call them by their deity form whenever they're actually in deity form. So like when Odin is active, they call him Odin instead of calling him his human name and whatever. And so they kind of go back and forth as if the names are synonymous with each other, or you can replace them with one another whenever they're in that form, which is fair and cool and fine, I guess. It's almost, I guess, closer to similar to, as long as the individual has a good pact or relationship with their deity, at least on like just a functional business level, then it's more like the human individual is controlling a body of the deity, if that makes sense. Not the deity themselves, but just like a personification, a physical manifestation of the deity, if that kind of makes sense. Especially because they constantly appear and reappear and their body dematerializes and stuff. That's kind of the implication, is that those aren't physically the deities in and of themselves. It's just more of a manifestation of the deity. So like the deity's essence and nature and power and abilities and stuff are all present, but if you were to kill that deity in that form, you're not killing the actual deity, you're just killing the manifestation that the human has summoned or transformed into. Anyways, that was a very like long roundabout way of describing that, but it's very Attack on Titan-esque, especially because, similar to Attack on Titan, Final Fantasy XVI has a good amount to say as far as like government political stuff and both economical and racial class systems and stuff like that. So it's really cool, like world building stuff. Final Fantasy XVI did a really good job in that department, I think. Gameplay wise, it is a lot of fun. I didn't know this, but the way that I was playing the game, I started the game off with an item that basically auto did my combos for me. So all I had to press was square or X or whatever the attack button was, and it just automatically did all my combos. Very similar to like Kingdom Hearts, where if you have a certain finisher equipped, then you'll do your combo with that finisher. You don't have to input any extra commands or inputs or so on. Turns out, I didn't realize this until closer to like the second to last boss fight of the game, around Odin, was that you can remove the item, and it has you manually input all the combos, more closer and similar to like a to a Devil May Cry, a DMC gameplay style. So if you like doing the more like manual combos and stuff from DMC, you can do that. But if you also like just the hack and slash style of like Kingdom Hearts, you can do that too, which I really appreciated. Since I went the entirety of the game doing the whole more like hack and slash thing, I just ended up finishing the game with that. I would like to go back and play a more combo focused version of the game, but there's that. Everything else gameplay wise was a lot of fun with Final Fantasy XVI. Story wise was really cool too. Two really good boss fights, I think in just all of gaming, are present in Final Fantasy XVI. The Titan fight, in my opinion, is the better one. It's got like 6 phases, roughly, give or take. Maybe not 6 entirely new phases. Like, I think 1 or 2 of them have like sub-phases, so I might be counting into that. But on average, the fight has anywhere from 5 to 6 phases, which is insane. And the environment roughly changes, or like how you fight changes with each phase. Makes it feel very dynamic. Makes it feel very like not changing in a sense of like you have to, not in like Kingdom Hearts Recoded kind of changing, where it's like, why is this now a top-down shooter kind of thing. It's just awesome. The power scaling and stuff constantly keeps rising in that fight. It's really cool. It's very shonen inspired, shonen kind of, like you could watch that and be like, holy shit, this is like one of those pop-off moments from an anime kind of thing, right? So there's that. Then there's the Bahamut fight, which I think the first 2 parts of it are really good when you're playing as Ifrit and then when you're playing as Phoenix. When you play as the Ifrit-Phoenix fusion, it is still a lot of fun and it is really cool. It just felt more guaranteed. Like, I don't think I got hit more than twice during that part of the fight. It felt very easy, almost scripted. I don't actually know if it was. I'm sure I could have lost, but it felt really very, very easy. Now, the fusion thing was really cool, really awesome. But yeah, it's just a little odd that it was so easy after the fusion. But anyways, so that fight was really cool though, on like a grand spectacular kind of scale. But the first 2 phases felt a little more challenging and engaging for me. As for the final boss is okay. I was kind of back and forth on what I felt about this character. I forget his name, but he's just kind of like this cold machine-like deity, and he basically just wants to remove humanity from their free will. And he can't do that, so instead he's removing magic and mana from the world, which is going to kill the world of its resources, including humanity. So he's doing that, which, like, in my head, I don't really see the whole free will bit as necessary, because it's like he's killing the planet, which is why everything's dying and stuff. Like, sure, there's wars and so on, but arguably, like, there's wars over the resources and everything that you're fighting over and so on. So, all that to say, DiGiorno's. Yeah, I didn't really care for the final boss. I didn't really get his motivation. Well, like, I understood his motivation, it was just kind of barren to me. Especially because in JRPGs, in probably the most recent years, probably since 2015-ish, that's just all we've kind of gotten, in my opinion, is just constant free will, free will, free will, free will kind of thing. Like, we got it especially from Persona 5, it's probably the biggest one that comes to mind. We got it in Xenoblade 2, from what I remember of Xenoblade 2. Final Fantasy VII Remake to an extent as well. So it's just, yeah, there's this constant thing. And, like, I get it, because, like, especially in sort of today's day and age where you have like young adults who are more critical of certain ideologies and so on, and that's great and that's fine. I think everyone ought to be critically minded. Christianity happens to be the target of that a lot in the West because on just how prevalent and honestly disastrous the Christianity and the church has been historically. But to focus solely on free will is a little odd to me. Like, there's other parts, especially in a Judeo-Christian sense, but even in just like the wider religion, there's other parts that you could probably pick at, and I don't know, just philosophically, free will is complex, but it's also boring. Like, you can only have so many conversations about free will with somebody where it's just kind of like you're running in circles or it's pointless. I say this as a philosophy major who's been doing it for the past like 6+ years. So maybe that's just me. If the common masses want to talk more about free will, then let them, I guess. But for me, yeah, it was a little boring that the final boss was just wanting to eliminate free will. It's like, okay, I'm done with that. Especially in regards to Persona 5, one of the last videos I released was a philosophical analysis on Persona 5's villains and just the big bad story of the game and so on, which has a lot to do with not only free will, but also this Christian heresy called Gnosticism, which is awesome and amazing, not the heresy, but just the correlation and how Persona 5 ties Gnosticism in with its Judeo-Christian roots and to do the story of free will. It's kind of a blending of a couple different worlds there that all make sense, very theologically and philosophically. Anyways, all that to say, shameless plug, you should watch my Persona 5 and philosophy videos. But there's that. But Final Fantasy overall was a very enjoyable experience. I think I remember hearing something about DLC. I probably will play it, probably won't play it. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that both of the brothers die by the end of the game. I think that one of them should have stayed alive. I feel like the way that the story ended was realistic. I just think it would have been better had one of the brothers lived. Sometimes not every story necessarily needs to call for a sense of realism, right? It's not like we play Sonic the Hedgehog or Pokemon for the sense of realism, right? But anyways, I think it would have been cool if Jonah got to live, and then if they did DLC, you got to continue playing as Jonah, and then you got to play as some of Jonah's past too, because we get to see a lot of Clive during the span of Final Fantasy XVI with before and after all the time skips. Without Jonah, you get to see him a lot without Jonah, and so I would like to see a lot of Jonah without Clive. Anyways, that was kind of random. There's that. If there is DLC, it's probably going to be a while before I play it. I've kind of been off the DLC train for a while. More recently, I've gotten some DLC, like I got the Smash Bros. And the Mario Kart DLC that I bought years ago when they first came out. So there's that. Then I just bought the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC. I kind of forced myself to do that. And I think that's kind of been it. Like, I never got the Pokemon Sword or Shield DLC. I forced myself to get the Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC because of all the story stuff that was happening in there, and come to find out, it doesn't really look like that you can play Kingdom Hearts 4 without getting the DLC for Kingdom Hearts 3, which does kind of suck. I wish that Remind was more closer to Final Mix in the sense of it's not super necessary for the story, but you get a lot of like extra details that does tie into other games if you do get the Final Mix version. It's not what they did with Remind, not the way I would have done it. Nomura is crazy and on crack, and he has been since 2008, so there's that. Yeah, so Final Fantasy 16, I really enjoyed it. I know some people didn't, at least from what I saw after, or people saying it wasn't really for them. I don't really understand that, because it was like, in my mind, it was a good story about like this medieval setting that was kind of like a blend with Attack on Titan, and to me, I love those two things, putting together perfect. Yeah, so the only downside I kind of have on that was the free will thing and the fact that Jonah doesn't live. So now switching gears to Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2, very similarly, everyone and their mothers have been talking about it since ever. Was very hyped up, very incredibly hyped up, especially because of the Kraven and Venom stuff. More specifically, the Venom stuff. They were marketing Venom so hard for Spider-Man 2, which was cool and everything. But yeah, after the game came out for about a month or so, a bunch of people started having more critical opinions of the game, which is fine and fair. There's nothing wrong with changing your opinions. Like, especially when you have something for an extended amount of time, you kind of lose the honeymoon phase. The rose-tinted glasses come off a little bit. That's how things just work the longer time you spend with them. Like if you get a new game console, after maybe half a year with the game console, you get bored of it, or there's not as much enjoyment that comes out of it because you've been spending more time with it as much. The same thing happens with relationships, especially if it's like a honeymoon phase focused relationship, and so on, right? I didn't mean to get like very psychotherapy on you guys there. But that's just how things work, right? So my opinions of Spider-Man 2 were never really extreme to begin with, one way or the other. Like, I enjoyed the game. I did kind of feel like once the Venom stuff started happening, it felt very just... It didn't feel grounded as much as some of the other Insomniac games have been, especially Spider-Man 1. In comparison to Spider-Man 1, I kind of felt like that the characterization in Spider-Man 2 was a lot weaker, more specifically on the Peter story side of things. I didn't care for Harry as much as I thought I would have, probably just because he was Venom. I will admit, I was kind of going back and forth on whether I thought Harry would be Venom or not. It was very obvious that he would be, but in my head, I kind of tried psyching myself out in a sense of, well, it's so obvious they wouldn't do it, kind of a thing, right? But no, they kind of did the same thing that they did with Doc Ock in the sense of, oh, here's a character that you know is going to turn evil, so we're going to do our best to make you not want them to do that. And with Harry, I just feel like that it didn't really work. Harry kind of comes up out of the blue anyways, so when he does come and visit Peter and MJ, he just shows up, and it's very like, what are you doing here, Harry? We haven't seen you in like 6 years. And he's like, oh, well, I just got back from Europe. And that's the end of that conversation. So it's like, it's this very like, there isn't really an end to the conversation, and you know that there's more than Harry's just letting on to, obviously being about the symbiote. So, yeah, it's just kind of obvious that Harry's going to be Venom, and that doesn't really... Having the friendship resurge between Peter and Harry doesn't really do it for me like Ock and Peter did before. There's that. As far as Miles goes, I'll be the first to admit, I did play the Miles Morales game, but the characterization in that game, I didn't really care for a whole lot. Like, the only characters that I can really recall from that game, aside from Rio and Miles, is Genki, and then the friend that turned evil and died. I don't remember her name, but I liked the story of Miles Morales a lot more than I like his kind of story in Spider-Man 2. In Spider-Man 2, it kind of feels like that they did Miles a little dirty. He's just kind of like, he feels like a Spider-Man sidekick. Even when you have to play as Miles to fight Peter to get the symbiote off, it feels very like Robin trying to help Batman out kind of thing. Is really much what that feels like. Miles, in my opinion, felt a lot more all his own in the Miles Morales game. Now, having like some of the Martin Lee interactions and stuff was really cool. It just felt like it took so long in Spider-Man 2 for that to happen. And then after it happens, Miles is still doing... He just feels more sidekick. So it feels like, at least in my opinion, they put Miles off to the sidelines in Spider-Man 2. At the end of Spider-Man 2, Peter retires, or takes a break, I think is more specifically what he says. So people are expecting more Miles stuff to be prevalent in Spider-Man 3 or in a second Miles Morales game, especially with potential Cindy Moon stuff happening. So I don't know. I don't really know where that's going, but I did feel like some of the characterization in Miles in Spider-Man 2, it felt a lot stronger. Like, I cared more. I forget her name, but the girl that does the girl that has to do ASL. I like her a lot more. I don't remember her in Miles Morales. She may not have been in that game the more I think about it, but it could have just been me not caring a whole lot about the Miles game or the characterization of the Miles game in the first place. But I cared a lot more about the Miles characters in Spider-Man 2. I wasn't expecting to, so that was nice. I cared a lot more about the Miles characters, and I cared a lot less about the Peter characters as the story went on. Just because, yeah, I felt like the Peter characters, they didn't feel very grounded. They felt very, like, MCU kind of inspired in the sense of, like, oh, here's this character, and you're going to care about them because, whoa, they're this character, right? Especially, like, Harry. MJ, I didn't really care for a whole lot in this game either. Like, sure, she's a lot cooler. Design-wise, I didn't care for her. Attitude-wise, she seemed different in this game than the other one, and I don't necessarily think that's the result of like an arc or anything. It just seemed like just the way that they wrote the character seemed different, seemed more. I don't want to say the word dominant. I don't know what other word I would use. Not arrogant either. But when you play as MJ, she's really cool. Just like MJ as a character in and of herself, I cared a lot more about in Spider-Man 1 than I did here. And I know that in Spider-Man 1, she's a lot more just like a Lois Lane kind of copycat, but I did like that about her in Spider-Man 1. I just thought that fit her for that story. Spider-Man 2, she does like, by the end of it, she does her own podcast kind of thing, which is also cool. Yeah. Gameplay-wise, gameplay was a lot of fun. I noticed that they, in comparison to Spider-Man 1, they got rid of the web wheel. I didn't notice it while playing Spider-Man 1 initially, but after playing Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2, and then back and playing Spider-Man 1 again, I can kind of see it, how the web wheel was very overpowered, so a lot of people were glad to see that feature being removed for Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 almost kind of feels like it had a Kingdom Hearts problem there for a second, in the sense of, like, in Kingdom Hearts, the reason Sora starts at level 1 every time, A, is obviously for story reasons, but it's also because if he would to constantly just carry over his powers from each game, he would be incredibly power-crept and busted. So in Kingdom Hearts 1, that's in the form of limits and the summons and stuff. In Kingdom Hearts 2, he's lost those, so now he has drive forms, which are also incredibly busted. Dream Drop Distance, he's lost drive forms. Kingdom Hearts 3, he's lost all the other stuff, but now he has like 6 new abilities with Keyblade forms and Keyblade transformations and attraction flows and so on, and he still has remnants of flow motion. So Spider-Man kind of felt like it was almost having a similar problem because they were giving so many new abilities and stuff with the new skill tree and stuff to Peter and Miles that they kind of had to get rid of something from the previous game. So if the web wheel had to go, then that makes a lot of sense. Especially because, like, Peter having not only the Iron Spider suit, which I know that's not what it's called, but that is what it functions as, and then having the anti-symbiote kind of thing, I don't really know how I feel about that, because I guess this is a high-tech Peter Parker, and I understand that despite the fact that he's homeless and jobless for so much of just the entire series, it is a little weird that he's able to craft all of these like high-tech suits and gadgets, but he's broke. So there's that. The anti-symbiote, the gameplay's fun, it's just I don't know how much sense Peter's gameplay makes sense as far as the story and stuff goes. Miles was a lot of fun to play as. I think I preferred playing with like Venom Shock and stuff than I did with Peter. I do like Peter more as a character. He's just more relatable to me. But gameplay-wise, I really enjoyed Miles. So all in all, Venom stuff was a little boring. As far as like it being hairy, it just didn't feel as grounded. It felt more like MCU, whoa, we have to do this to stop the end of the world kind of thing. And you have these questions like, well, where are the Avengers? Where are all the other heroes? And so on. Like, very realistic questions that people in the world of the game would be asking, right? So it almost kills that immersion for the player a little bit. The last point I'll make about Spider-Man 2, which I just remembered from gameplay-wise, is when you do combos, this is true for all of them, for all the Spider-Man games, you fill up this meter. In the original Spider-Man game, when the meter's full, you can use the meter in its entirety to do like a huge AoE thing, right? Well, as the meter's charging, you can deplenish the meter to regain your health. Basically, what that would mean, though, is that if you're ever low on health, then you can run and do like a 1-2 hit combo to fill up the meter just a little bit, run away, avoid the enemy attacks, because it's pretty easy to do that in Spider-Man, and then run back in, 1-2 hit combo, run away, to constantly regain your health. Which is admittedly a more like scummy, coward, whatever way of playing the game, but if that's an optimal way to play the game, then play the game like that, right? If camping like that is a fair, because it is fair, if it's a fair way to play the game, then let people play the game that way, in my head, especially if people struggle with taking a lot of damage. Give safer players a way of safely regaining their health quicker. I don't remember that being a thing in Miles, but it's not a thing in Spider-Man 2 at all. So now the bar has been limited to you can only heal when it's full. So when it's full, you're given the options or choice of doing a huge AoE hit or healing. I died so many times in Spider-Man 2 because I was used to running away and healing and so on. So I died a lot to just street thugs and stuff. And I think, too, I played it on not the hardest difficulty, but the second to last one, because I think there's 4 different difficulties. So, yeah, anyways. Oh yeah, so the removal of that bar healing option was a little weird. I think that they could have kept the healing thing, but that's just me. So, Spider-Man 2, all in all, was good. I preferred the first half. I mean, like, all in all, I liked it. Miles' suit is atrocious. Peter retiring or taking a break at the end of the game is going to be interesting to see how they move forward. I'm interested in DLC. The Venom stuff felt very, like, grand Neos kind of stuff. It felt more like MCU Peter Parker than it did like a more grounded take, so I didn't really care for that. It is really awesome to see Venom in any kind of form of media. I have the 19-inch Venom statue, and so on. So I really did. I wish that the game probably... Here's what I think. I think that the game should have largely just been the Kraven stuff. And by the end of the game is when Peter really starts... having like is when the suit starts interacting him a lot more. I think the end of the game should have ended with Miles versus Peter. That's how I think the game should have ended. And then DLC should have been Harry getting the Venom suit, and then playing a lot more as Harry in the DLC, and then the DLC being you, Miles, Peter and Miles fighting Harry with the Venom suit. I understand that those kind of like cut the story in half a little bit, so it might make it feel like a little incomplete, but I don't know. Then in my mind, you could have also maybe reduced the initial price of the game. Instead of a $70 game, you could have made it $40 or $50 or something, right, in my head. But that wasn't going to happen anyways. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Final Fantasy 16 and Spider-Man 2. I have no idea how long this recording's been going on for, but to talk about both games, I think I did alright. So anyways, guys, this is Jake, logging out.